Hey everyone, this is Lourdes Turrecha, founder of the Rise of Privacy Tech, and welcome again to TROPT, as we like to abbreviate the Rise of Privacy Tech, to the TROPT Webcast. We're doing a mini-series on defining the privacy tech landscape, and I'm really excited today because we have Melanie Ensign, who is the founder and CEO of Discernible and TROPT Advisor, join us today. We will be talking about her experience in the privacy tech landscape, including helping us define this space, as she's one of our trustee working group members that helped us draft the white paper that we just released. Melanie, thank you so much for joining us today. Feel free to add to the introduction that I gave, and welcome to the webcast again.
Wow, thanks so much, Lourdes. Really appreciate the invitation. I'm so happy to be here. Always love engaging with the TROPT community and sharing the experiences and insights that I've gained over my career. I'll just add a little bit of additional context for folks who don't know who I am, and also to give you a bit of context about the perspective and the lens through which I look at the privacy tech landscape and privacy in general. So as Lourdes mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of Discernible. We are a specialized communications advisory firm focused specifically on privacy, security, and risk organizations. So our clients are chief privacy officers, privacy engineering teams, InfoSec teams, CISOs. Those are the folks that we work with to help all of them become more effective communicators within their organizations so that they have more influence over the business and giving them more control over their own destiny so that they're not always treated as the janitorial staff by the rest of the company and being expected to clean up everybody else's mess. Prior to that, I led security, privacy, and engineering communications for Uber. And in a previous life, I worked on security communications for Facebook, AT&T, and others along the way. So I definitely look at privacy from a communications perspective and a human relations perspective, and also bringing with me my background in cybersecurity in the way that I think about it as well, understanding that they are distinct disciplines, but there are quite a few lessons that we can learn from the security space so that we don't repeat some of the same pitfalls on the privacy side.
Oh, so much to unpack there. But before we jump into the adjacencies, and we had an excellent conversation earlier this morning in the working group about, redefining the privacy tech space industry, but we also should look at the adjacent cybersecurity space and some of the lessons, like you said, especially comms lessons that we should avoid when it comes to how we talk about privacy tech. I'd love for you to share what actually interested you in the emerging privacy tech landscape. I mean, coming from working with, big organizations that have big teams working on privacy and security and engineering and product teams. What was it about this scrappy little emerging space that got you to jump in and say, hey, this is actually really interesting, and I want to spend some of my time working in this space?
Sure. So the one caveat is that I'm not sure that getting involved in privacy was necessarily my choice up front. It was somewhat a necessity of the job at a certain point. But the thing that really kind of attracted me to it, and the reason that I've stayed engaged even when it's not, a corporate mandate, there's really two things. Is one, the thing that attracted me even to the cybersecurity space was this sense of helping people and protecting people and wanting to make technology and the internet just a safer space for consumers and for people who weren't, super technical. Consumers shouldn't have to have a PhD in all of these topics in order to have a safe experience using technology. And so that's really what attracted me, to cybersecurity, was the opportunity to be part of something bigger than myself and to actually improve the life of, the lives of other people. And privacy has very similar opportunities depending on where you choose to dip your toe. But that leads me to the second part of what interested me in, privacy to begin with is I started my introduction into privacy was from the engineering side. So my first privacy clients, they were internal, was the privacy engineering team. And the reason for that was because the privacy engineering team actually reported up into the chief security officer. And so, when I was leading security and communications, privacy was just a part of that organization. And over time, it really grew and became its own discipline within the company. And I had the opportunity to work with product teams and the legal team to really build out a privacy narrative, as well as, privacy principles in terms of how we talk about it, right? So the privacy team has their own principles in terms of how they make privacy decisions. But we also needed to have principles and guidelines on how do we talk about privacy as a company, and how will our privacy principles that have been developed by that organization help us in, being more transparent and being more accurate and helpful in the communications with our stakeholders. So I would have to say that the initial foot in the door into privacy was somewhat of a push by a former employer, but it really checked the boxes for me in terms of being part of something that helps others, and having a technical component that really keeps my interest and gives me an opportunity to keep learning more.
What about your specific interest in the privacy tech landscape in particular? So I'm assuming naturally it came from your in-house experience and you saw, but I don't mean to, put words in your mouth. I'm curious what you saw in the emerging privacy tech space that interested you in it and made you decide, hey, I want to spend some of the time I have today on working, consulting with, or advising this space or startups in this space.
Sure. So I think it was really fueled by the fact that when I was working in-house, I saw a lot of engineering teams trying to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. And when we started engaging with our peers at other companies, what we found was we were all creating the same wheel within our own environments. And while we had a pretty good system for knowledge exchange within our circle of peer companies, it just isn't scalable to think that everybody is going to have a Facebook or Google or, Apple or Uber level budget for engineering to build everything in-house. The other thing is that, when we approach it that way, not only are we building the same thing in all of these places, right, and have recreating the wheel over and over again, we lack the opportunity to learn from other companies and other industries and folks who may have different experiences that could actually improve the systems that we're building. And so I got really invested in the privacy tech space, particularly because I wanted to see more solutions come to market that would help us scale privacy beyond just, the FANG companies or big tech companies that had big budgets, to build everything in-house. And so, looking at this from my perspective as, a communications advisor, I was like, how can I help not only identify the solutions that the market needs, but help them thrive in the market so that they reach a point of viability where they can scale to more companies across industries.
I love that so much because the way we define privacy tech, as you and I know in the white paper, is, technical solutions to privacy problems. And I love what you said about scaling these solutions beyond the big tech companies that could afford the armies of privacy engineers graduating from the very, little, small number of schools that actually teach privacy engineering. And so that, that resonates with me quite a bit. I love how we're also focusing on the technical side to it. We've paid a lot of attention to the legal and compliance sides, which are important, but I don't feel like we've really built and looked at the tech side to privacy. And I'm really excited that you've joined us in this journey to fuel privacy innovation through the rise of privacy tech and the work that you do through Discernible as well. For benchmarking purposes, I'm sure some of the folks in our community would be curious. Can you give us a ballpark as to how many privacy tech startups you've worked with throughout the past couple of years? May they be through consulting or advisory roles?
Sure. So Discernible itself is only a few years old, but in that time, we've advised about a dozen different privacy tech startups. The other thing that I think is particularly interesting is privacy tech isn't being built only by privacy tech startups. We have a number of clients who are in different industries in terms of their core business, and they are trying to build privacy tech in-house because the solution they need doesn't yet exist from a vendor perspective. And so there is a lot of privacy tech innovation happening in different industries. And we're very lucky to be able to work with those companies to help them understand the expectations of their shareholders and to be able to meet those audiences where they are and in the language and vocabulary that makes sense for them.
And in some way, that highlights the urgency of the privacy technical debt that we've incurred throughout the decades, right? Because instead of waiting for a solution to get introduced into the market and become mature, many companies are seeing, even big tech companies are seeing the urgency of these privacy problems and building their own solutions internally. And so if that's not a call to build privacy tech and to innovate in privacy, I don't know what else is. I'm curious, what specific types or categories or what factors do you take into account when you're looking to work with a privacy tech startup? And to everyone listening, take note, because Melanie is is very busy, and so if you even want to work with her, you should probably take out your pen and paper and start taking down notes.
So our process has certainly evolved since we started, because our clients have evolved and the market has evolved, right? The types of companies that are looking for communications help are not even the same companies that we were talking to, I would say maybe even, 18, 24 months ago. Yeah. So but the first thing that we do before we agree to engage formally with a company is bring in technical experts. So we have contractors on staff who are full-time privacy or security engineers, depending on, what we're looking at. And they will come and help me kick the tires because the one thing I will not do is promote vaporware, as you know. So I shouldn't say that's the one thing I won't do. It's one of the things I will not do. Definitely not. So, getting a technical analysis of the solution itself and the technology to make sure that there's substance behind the claims, but also to get, truthfully, sometimes clients are not the best salespeople for their own technology. And so sometimes it's really helpful to bring in an objective person who can say, actually, the really cool part of this technology and the reason why I would use this at my company is this other reason. And maybe that becomes a compelling message for us, or, a pillar of the sales strategy or go-to-market strategy of, maybe there's actually a whole group of potential customers we've missed because we've only been looking at this one capability of the technology. And so that's the first step, is to get a technical analysis just to make sure that we're all on the same page and we have a single source of truth in terms of what is real from a technical perspective. And then from there, what we're really focused on is helping companies understand their own narrative and being able to articulate that. And that includes not just, your typical, messaging development and things like that, but you need to actually be able to put on different hats depending on who you're talking to. And one of the things that's often overlooked in the privacy tech landscape is that you can't sell privacy effectively if you're only targeting one specific discipline or function within a company, right? Privacy is cross-functional. You need to have messaging that appeals to lawyers and engineers, as well as business executives. And so a lot of times what we're actually helping our clients do is empower their prospects to sell their own programs and their own influence within their organization. So if a chief privacy officer or privacy engineering team does not have the budget to buy the solution and technologies that they need, we actually need to make them more influential within their own company in order to get the resources that they need to build out the technical capabilities, whether it's through a vendor or through in-house building. And so it's something that we see a lot of clients struggling with, and it's what a lot of them come to us for help with is, help me be more influential within my own company so that when I need budget for a solution, I have it. And so then getting the headcount that I need. And when we're working with startups and vendors, oftentimes we're coaching them on how to coach their prospects on being more effective within their organization. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the first part definitely resonates, right? You want startups, you want to work with startups who walk the privacy talk. So it's not all claim. You want a technically sound product because, as you mentioned, you don't want to be advocating for privacy vaporware. So the second part, is there some sort of criteria? Do you want startups who are open to coaching when it comes to the messaging, or how do you even assess that part when it comes to?
I would articulate it kind of as looking for clients who care about elevating the profession of privacy. Yeah. That it's not just about, selling a product. That is absolutely important. Your business will not exist if we don't sell. Right. But who is bought into the bigger picture mission of elevating the professionals that they're selling to.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm curious if you're also looking into the types or categories, or that you're agnostic when it comes to categories of privacy tech, which actually is my next question, or kind of dives into my question, which is, which types or categories of privacy tech do you find most promising? And I'm pretty sure you're not going to answer compliance for data protection compliance tech.
I mean, the only issue I have with compliance is when it's compliance for the sake of compliance.
Yeah.
And only because it's such a missed opportunity. Again, if we go back to, the previous criteria, we are not elevating the profession of privacy by checking boxes, right? If all we're doing is, proving that we followed the law, we're not growing our influence within the business community or, political circles or whichever circles are important to your organization. And so, it's not that we don't work with compliance companies, it's that there needs to be more to it. Yeah. In terms of their commitment to the community and the industry and how their technology can elevate their users and the profession at large.
So let me rephrase that. Obviously, there's a place for them, and we needed those tools in order to build on top to go beyond compliance. But I'm curious, which types excite you, and which ones do you find, which types of privacy tech do you find most compelling or most promising, and or just the ones that you wake up in the morning and feel like, oh, this doesn't feel like work because they're really solving for privacy problems that I care about.
Yeah, I would say my favorite space to work in is technology that is enabling privacy by default. Technology that makes it so that consumers don't have to check a whole bunch of settings or different toggles in order to get good privacy. And so any kind of technology that makes it easier for privacy to be the default rather than something that consumers constantly have to think about. That's my favorite space to work, because that means that even if consumers never hear about us, we're still making their life better and still giving them better protections. And that to me is a really compelling space to be in, because the client, as well as, the client's customers, are committed to this journey of doing what's right, even if we don't get credit.
Thank you. That's a really, I don't think I've heard anyone answer that before, and I'm with you. They're doing privacy because they care and not because of the headlines or the tweets.
I think it's completely acceptable and necessary that there be a business model behind it. But, I've been in communications and the public relations space for long enough to know that a lot of the kind of like in the moment attention that companies are paying for don't create sustainable revenue. They don't generate the kind of leads that, you might expect. And so, we focus a lot on, the strategies and the techniques that drive results. And if we can't prove results, I don't think it's a good use of our resources or our clients' resources to throw spaghetti at the wall just to see what sticks.
Speaking of challenges, what are some of those challenges that you're seeing, specifically comms challenges that you're seeing when it comes to working with privacy tech startups? If there was a theme or a thread that you keep seeing in working with the startups that you advise or consult with, what's like one or two things? What are one or two things that you think are some of their bigger challenges when it comes to comms?
Yeah, so I think there's two big things. The first one, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier, is not actually understanding your own value proposition from the perspective of your customer. So, we will have clients come to us and say, this is why people would buy us. This is what we offer. These are capabilities. We end up doing focus groups and messaging groups to find out what actually resonates. And what we find out is that they're attractive to certain prospects for completely unexpected reasons. And so I think that's an initial challenge is, they pitched one thing to their investors, right? To the folks who are financing the company, but that might not actually be the reason why somebody would buy your product or, implement your solution. And so that's one common challenge.
Before you jump to the second one, I don't want to lose this one because it's a really important point. Why do you think that is? Is it because of lack of market research? They just didn't do their homework? Is it because they also, lack of understanding of privacy or the privacy domain in general? Why is that a big challenge?
I think a lot of it just has to do with the speed of innovation and change in technology infrastructure in general. So, a lot of startup founders perhaps, are coming from, in-house positions where they had a particular challenge at that company or organization, and they've gone out to build the solution to a problem that they saw, that there wasn't an answer for yet. And in the time that they've done that, a lot of things have changed for engineers. So just keeping up with that can be very difficult. And you need to constantly evaluate your messaging and your narrative to make sure that it resonates with current state and the way that, teams are currently thinking about privacy. A good example of this is, it wasn't that long ago where, companies could say, we encrypt data at rest and in transit, and they were good. That was sufficient from a data protection perspective, right? Like, we're not talking about decades ago. There's a few years ago, right? That was sufficient. And it has changed dramatically to the point where the technical proof that you need to be able to provide publicly, not just, through some of the more traditional means like white papers and things like that, but being able to distill it for different stakeholder groups and being comfortable putting it loud and proud on your website, that has changed very quickly. And so, same thing with back-end infrastructure and engineering techniques where it's just hard to keep up with it unless you are constantly checking in with the community and your prospects in terms of what does their environment currently look like? What do you need to be able to comply with from a technical perspective? And what are their needs as an organization? Sometimes their needs are not, I would say sometimes their most pressing need is not a technical one. They may have some other barrier that is preventing them from being able to make the technical choices that they want to. And so I think the cause of that is just being disconnected from the community, which actually leads me to the second point, which is that, or the second most common theme that I see in terms of challenges is not being able to effectively communicate with the community, right? I think there is a misperception that, if you can sell one thing, you can sell anything. And the reality is the privacy community right now is so small in terms of where the influence comes from, and whose opinions matter in terms of driving adoption of new technologies, that if you are not actively involved in that community, you will miss the opportunity for building relationships, for learning the cultural norms, for knowing which events matter and which ones don't, for knowing, if when you're looking for, technical credibility or somebody to kind of back up your position, who should those people be? I see a lot of money kind of being thrown around as if privacy is just traditional, like SaaS sales. And it's really not. If you're not engaged in kind of the, I hate to make this sound elitist, but it is kind of just the phase that the community is in right now, where those that are driving opinions and those that are driving adoption of new kinds of technology, it is still a small group. In fact, I've talked to a lot of CISOs and a lot of CPOs about where do they get their information from and what sources do they trust and consult when they're making a technology decision like this. And I kid you not, there is one person on Twitter that every person cites as, I just follow this person and whatever they say is the thing that I go investigate. That is how insular this group is right now. And so that second challenge of just not, needing to throw yourself into the community and actually become become a member of the community yourself is another challenge.
I'd love to unpack that further. I'm with you. I mean, we're all about, it's such a small community. It's a tight-knit community, similar to security. And we talked about relationship building and the importance of integrating yourself within the community. Another point that you brilliantly made is also figuring out the proper vessel for that message that you're trying to convey. But I do want to go back to substance. Do you also see them struggle? So in addition to the vessel for the message and making the relationships, which we're all about those too at the rise of privacy tech, do you also see pitfalls when it comes to the substance of the message? And is it the language that they're using or they're speaking, or not, just not knowing the privacy language as well? Or is it failing to articulate the value proposition? What are some of the substance type of pitfalls that they're making when it comes to the actual value that they're trying to effectively communicate to their prospects?
Yeah, I think the big thing is not truly understanding what drives adoption of certain technologies, right? We see a lot of privacy tech startups who kind of rest on their laurels when it comes to privacy laws and legislation, and assuming that they can just wait for regulation to force people to buy their product, and it doesn't always work that way.
Right. If they're trying to sell to CPOs, if they're looking into, if that's their market, then it might work, right? But not when it comes to selling tools to developers or risk.
Well, and even selling, even selling to CPOs don't own data stores. or, infrastructure. CPO can buy technical solutions all day long. They can't implement any of them without buy-in and participation from the engineering organization. And so the only thing that a CPO can really buy, based just on the fire from the law, is workflows. Exactly. Things that are limited to their own operations, right. Which is not a huge segment of privacy work at a company. And so I think, a lot of the disconnect in terms of, messaging around substance is just not understanding how prospects make decisions about purchasing. And it includes, a number of different factors, not just, I know that I need this type of solution. Let me look at the options and do some comparison shopping. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of times being involved in elevating the profession is so important because sometimes you have to convince them that a solution is needed. Sometimes you need to convince them that buying a solution is more effective than building a solution. There's not an engineering lead on the planet who is going to say, who's going to turn down the opportunity to get more headcount, to build something internally. Engineering teams love to build their own stuff. They may not have the resources, they may not have the time, but that is something you have to convince them of. Because a lot of times they will just prefer to build it themselves because everybody thinks they have a custom environment that, requires a special snowflake solution. It's just the culture at the moment. And so helping them understand that your engineering team as a vendor is a partner, not just, a vendor or, point of sale kind of relationship, that you can partner with them from a technical perspective, that you can help them do more than they can on their own, is part of having those bigger operational conversations that go above and beyond the specific tech that you're building, and has to do with, do you actually really understand what it means to practice privacy inside of a company? And do you understand what it means to be a partner as well as a tool that they can use to, improve the results and the outcomes that they're accountable for to their business?
You touch on so many important themes that we're seeing. Defining and identifying the different customer personas beyond CPOs is certainly one of the things that we keep trying to push the privacy tech startups that come our way. And then obviously the build versus buy conundrum that many folks find themselves in. So we've had other privacy leaders comment on that in previous conferences of ours. And I think we might, one of these days we should probably just do a workshop on that. Like, what are the things that lead to you buying versus building these things? Mel, I feel like as always, we could go on for hours, but I did say that we were only going to do this for half an hour. So thank you for letting me take 30 minutes of your time today. I know you're very busy. I do want to give you the opportunity to share any calls to action that you might have with the Rise of Privacy Tech community, where they can find you, how they can find you online if you want to be found, or any other things that you want to share that might be of interest to them.
Sure. So the easiest place to find me is on LinkedIn. Just search for my name, Melanie Ensign, easiest way. In terms of call to action, so I'm actually involved in this effort being led by NIST in terms of privacy workforce working group. This is probably going to be a multi-year effort because we have set a pretty ambitious goal for ourselves to define the specific skills and tasks that are required to build an effective privacy program based specifically on the NIST privacy framework. So the working group is open to anybody who wants to get involved and contribute and provide input on, what that final outcome should be in terms of guidance for privacy practitioners and leaders on the skills needed for their teams to meet those that standard of the NIST privacy framework. You can find information on the NIST website to do that. We are tackling a couple of areas of privacy at a time from that framework. So plenty of opportunities to jump in on the next subject matter and quarter of privacy that we're working on. So if you're interested in being a part of that effort, it's not too late. You can definitely still jump in.
That is such an important undertaking. So good luck to the NIST working group, privacy workforce working group. I feel way better already knowing that you're involved in it. And to everyone who's tuning in, thank you for listening to us today. And don't forget to check out the Defining Privacy Tech Landscape white paper that we just released here at the Rise of Privacy Tech. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.